The fluorescent lights above flickered faintly in Marion Hartley's small-town diner, casting long, uneven shadows across the worn-out laminate table. Outside, Cedar City still slept under a pale, wintry dawn. It was 5:30. I am the kind of quiet that felt like the world was holding its breath. The diner wouldn't open for another hour and a half, but inside the air was already heavy, thick with grief and uncertainty. Around a cluttered table sat 4 women, their eyes hollowed by months of restless nights and unanswered questions. Strewn across the surface were coffee-stained maps, grainy drone footage, faded shipping manifests, and scribbled notes so worn the ink had begun to bleed. It was more than paper. It was the fragmented trail of their missing daughters. Marion ran her trembling fingers through her shoulder-length ash-blonde hair, so much like her daughter Olivia's. Her hands paused mid-motion, hovering over a printout of the last known drone footage near the Gulf. Across from her, Elena Cruz slouched in a chair, her usually pristine appearance replaced by a hastily tied ponytail and a blouse she hadn't bothered to iron. Next to her, Natalie Dawson clutched her wedding ring, twisting it over and over, as if the motion might ground her, and beside her sat Danica White, composed in posture but betrayed by the raw fear behind her eyes. Their daughters, Olivia Hartley, Jasmine Cruz, Claire Dawson, and Sophia White, had been inseparable since high school, best friends, soul sisters in every way that counted. They had chosen to attend Southern Utah University together, laughing through freshman orientation, planning a shared future in environmental science. But now they shared something else, a haunting silence that stretched across 4 months and 4 aching families. "Mrs. Hartley," came a voice, calm yet carrying the weight of restraint. FBI agent Philip Carter, standing at the edge of the room, addressed her gently, the tone of someone who had long since learned how to deliver painful truths without unraveling hope. "I understand how deeply frustrating this is. Please know, we are pursuing every lead." His partner, Agent Rebecca Thompson, nodded beside him. Her eyes were kind but guarded, the expression of someone who'd seen too many disappearances spiral into dead ends. "We've combed every possible location. Nothing in Utah. No signs at the state borders. Even in Texas, where they were last seen, the trail just vanished." Marion's voice cracked as she spoke, the pain pushing through her exhaustion. "It's been 4 months. 4 months since they decided to take that detour." Her hands curled into fists, pressing into the table's edge. That decision, the girl's spontaneous plan to explore the Texas coast, had become an unbearable pivot point. What was meant to be a quick volunteer visit had turned into a waking nightmare. Originally, their entire class had been scheduled to assist with an environmental restoration project in Oregon, planting native grasses along the wind-swept dunes. But Olivia, ever the idealist, had caught wind of something more urgent. A marine research contact had tipped her off about a secluded Texas beach where endangered sea turtles had begun nesting unusually early. It had sounded important. They wanted to help. So, the 4 girls rerouted south before joining their classmates, but they never made it to Oregon. They never made it back at all. "We've interviewed everyone connected to the organization that coordinated the Oregon trip," Agent Thompson continued. "We've tracked every breadcrumb along the Texas coastline, hotel registries, car rentals, gas stations, traffic cams. Everything's come up dry." Danica, quiet until now, spoke evenly, though her voice trembled beneath the surface. "What about their phones? There must have been something. A last call, a message, anything?" Agent Carter hesitated for half a beat, then answered. "All 4 phones went offline within an hour of each other, on May 24th. Last signal was pinged outside Corpus Christi. After that, nothing." The quiet that followed was deafening. In the background, the muffled clang of the kitchen staff preparing for the morning shift floated through the swinging doors, clashing against the unbearable stillness of the dining area. The walls around them were papered with flyers, missing posters with the girls' faces, their smiles frozen in time, watching over their mothers like ghosts unwilling to let go. Suddenly, Agent Carter's phone buzzed. He stepped away, and the room held its breath. The shift in his posture was subtle, but the women noticed. 4 pairs of eyes, drained but still burning with maternal instinct, tracked his every movement. When he returned, his voice carried a different weight. "Ladies," he began, carefully choosing each word, "we may have something." Marion sat up straighter. Her breath hitched. "The Texas Coast Guard just found something we believe may be connected to your daughters. A shipping container docked at the port of Brownsville. They found personal belongings inside." Elena leaned forward, her voice sharp with rising panic. "What kind of belongings?" "A pink suitcase, backpacks, other personal effects, things that match the descriptions from your missing persons report," Carter replied. "The scene's being secured now. We'll know more soon." The words hung in the air like a gust of cold wind through a cracked window. Hope, cautious and fragile, stirred in each of them. For the first time in months, there was something tangible, something real, but with it came dread. Because whatever was in that container was just the beginning. "We need to go," Marion said, her voice clear and immediate as she rose to her feet. The fatigue that had dulled her eyes for weeks was suddenly eclipsed by a quiet, unwavering resolve. "We have to see it for ourselves. Those could be our girls' things." Agent Thompson nodded without hesitation. "We can arrange transportation. A flight to Brownsville will take about 3.5 hours. "I'll close the diner," Marion replied firmly. No more hesitation, no more waiting for news to find them. They were going to meet it head on. Within the hour, preparations were in motion. The mothers packed small overnight bags, each movement laced with purpose. No one knew how long they'd be away, but they all understood. This could be the turning point, or another dead end. But they couldn't risk not being there. By 7:30 IEM, they were seated aboard a small plane at Cedar City Regional Airport. The FBI agents accompanied them, silent but present. The cabin buzzed faintly with the hum of engines, but inside, a different kind of tension thrummed. No one spoke much during the flight. There was nothing left to say that hadn't already been said. Instead, the mothers sat with their thoughts, swirling fragments of memory, fear, and fragile hope. Marion stared out the window, watching clouds drift past like ghosts. Danica clutched the strap of her purse, white-knuckled. Elena whispered prayers under her breath. Natalie replayed the last voicemail from her daughter again and again in her head, holding on to that sound like a lifeline. By the time they touched down in Brownsville, shortly after 11 o'clock IM, the sun was high but offered no warmth. Police vehicles were already waiting. A swift convoy of cruisers cut through the city streets toward the bustling port. As they arrived, the scene was controlled chaos. Coast Guard officers, Port Authority personnel, and forensic teams clustered around a large red shipping container. It had been removed from a freighter and now sat ominously alone, like a secret laid bare. Officer Curtis Prow of the Brownsville Police Department stepped forward to greet the group. "Agent Carter, Agent Thompson," he acknowledged the FBI agents before turning to the mothers. "Ladies, I wish we were meeting under better circumstances." He motioned to a man standing nearby, a shipping clerk named Reuben Kim. Reuben looked nervous, adjusting his glasses repeatedly as he explained what had happened. "It was supposed to be a routine inspection," he began. "We do random checks for contraband. One of our K-9 units alerted on this container, but when I checked the manifest, this container wasn't scheduled for shipment. It wasn't even supposed to be here." "What did you find inside?" Agent Carter asked. Reuben gestured toward the open doors. Inside the dim container, police had arranged the items they'd discovered with careful, almost reverent precision. A pink suitcase, 3 identical pink backpacks, a straw hat, a worn leather handbag, mattresses laid out across the floor. Nearby, empty water bottles and scattered canned goods hinted at someone having lived there. The mothers moved closer, drawn by a force stronger than fear. Their hearts pounded in their chests as they stepped into the shadowed entrance of the container. "Miss Hartley," Officer Prow asked gently, "can you identify any of these items?" Marion stepped forward first. Her hand shook as she reached for the pink suitcase. "This is Olivia's," she whispered. "I bought it for her high school graduation. These scratches, she got them on our trip to Denver last year." Her voice cracked. Memory and reality collided in her throat. Elena's eyes locked onto the straw hat. "Jasmine bought this for the trip," she murmured. Then she reached for a backpack. "And this is hers too. The dolphin charm. She loved the ocean." Her fingers lingered on the zipper pull like it was holy. Each mother found something. The group backpacks the girls had ordered online as a set, personalized with charms and pins that only they would know. A single bag was just a bag, but here they became artifacts of love, pain, and cruel, unanswered questions. Natalie stepped forward. "The mattresses," she said slowly, looking deeper into the container. "How long have they been here?" A forensic technician answered, his tone clinical. "Based on wear patterns and decay, I'd say these were used for an extended time, months, maybe longer. It's possible they were already in use before your daughters were brought here." Agent Carter's expression darkened. Someone was keeping them here, but they left, likely in a hurry. Once the inspection was scheduled, they probably had to move the girls. These belongings were meant to be returned to after the check. Agent Thompson added quickly, "Have you reviewed port security footage?" "We've started," Officer Prow replied. "But there's no sign of the girls. Whoever did this knew exactly where the cameras were. They likely moved them at night." Reuben nodded gravely. "This container was headed for Puerto Progreso, Mexico. We've already contacted Mexican authorities." Marion stood at the threshold, staring into the darkness. She tried to imagine her daughter inside this cold metal box, breathing stale air, waiting, hope. "How many more containers like this could there be?" she asked softly. "That's what we need to find out," Carter said. "Officer Prow will need to interview dock workers and the freighter crew. Someone had to see something." As the forensics team moved in, lifting fingerprints and collecting DNA swabs, the mothers took one last lingering look at the belongings. Each step away from the container felt like betrayal, as if leaving that spot meant turning their backs on their daughters. But they knew they had to keep moving. The only way to bring them back was to chase the truth relentlessly. The harbor office buzzed with administrative energy. The women were guided to a long conference table inside a room that overlooked the port. Maritime maps lined the walls. The smell of salt and oil drifted faintly through the glass. "Standard procedure," Officer Prow said, handing them clipboards. "We need formal statements, authorization for DNA comparison." The mothers sat together, shoulder to shoulder, silently filling in the same information they'd already relived countless times. The ache of repetition was unbearable, every signature another reminder of their helplessness. "How long for results?" Elena asked. "DNA will take a day or two," Agent Carter said. "Fingerprint results should be faster. We're also coordinating with Mexican authorities. Every port, every crossing point, we're watching them all." After finishing the paperwork, the mothers were led into an adjacent waiting room. It looked like every institutional room they'd come to loathe. Bland chairs, sterile walls, and that lingering sense that sorrow was just part of the furniture. Marion stood at the window, scanning the movement below. Massive cranes lifting containers like children's toys. Ships loomed on the horizon like floating cities. Somewhere down there, her daughter had been trapped, hidden in plain sight. Then she saw him. A man in a navy polo shirt talking to a port worker. Something about the way he gestured, the confidence in his posture, it made her pause. "Elena," she said quietly. "Do you recognize that man?" Elena joined her at the window. "He looks familiar. I just can't place him." Natalie suddenly rummaged through her purse. "Wait," she said, holding up a business card. "That's him." Marion read the name aloud. Brady Coburn, CEO of Future Path Volunteers. "That's right," Elena said, snapping her fingers. "They were at the University Career Fair. That's the organization that set up the Oregon trip." "And Olivia's marine research contact," Marion added, her voice tightening. "That was through them. They were the ones who told her about the beach in Texas." Outside, the man continued his conversation, unaware of the four mothers now watching him intently. Something had shifted. The path ahead was no longer just about missing girls. It was about the people who guided them there. And why? The four mothers exchanged uneasy glances. Danica voiced what all of them were thinking. The police have probably already spoken to them, right? But now that Coburn's here, maybe he should be questioned again. Marion glanced toward the conference room, where the agents were still deep in conversation with Officer Prow and the port authorities. "They're tied up right now. Let's just talk to him ourselves." "For now. He might know something even if he doesn't realize it." "I'll go with you," Natalie said without hesitation, standing beside her. "Elena," Danica, "if the agents ask, let them know where we went." With that, Marion and Natalie left the harbor office, the weight of suspicion thick in the humid air. They walked side by side across the concrete lot toward Brady Coburn, who was still speaking with a port worker wearing dark sunglasses. "Mr. Coburn?" Marion called out. Brady turned, his smile stiffening for just a fraction of a second before he smoothed it into professional courtesy. "Yes, can I help you?" "I'm Marion Hartley. This is Natalie Dawson. We met you at Southern Utah University last semester during the volunteer fair," Marion explained calmly, her gaze never leaving his. Recognition seemed to settle in after a moment. "Ah, yes, Cedar City. I remember now," he said with a quick nod. The port worker beside him gave a curt nod of acknowledgement before walking away, clipboard tucked under his arm. "What brings you to Brownsville?" Marion asked, forcing a casual tone, though her heart thudded with suspicion. Brady gestured broadly toward the stacked containers behind him. "Organizing supplies for a disaster relief shipment, medical gear and food for communities impacted by the hurricanes in Central America." Natalie raised an eyebrow, choosing her words carefully. "That's quite a coincidence. We didn't expect to see anyone from Utah here." Brady smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "And you ladies, what brings you to Brownsville? Surely not vacation." Marion shook her head, her voice even. "Actually, the authorities just found our daughter's belongings inside a shipping container here at the port." His face drained of color. "You mean the missing university students?" he asked, his voice tight. "That's shocking. The FBI interviewed everyone at Future Path months ago, since we arranged the Oregon trip. Terrible, Natalie nodded slowly, watching him like a hawk. "It's being treated as a criminal case now. The container had mattresses, personal effects. Looks like someone was keeping them there." Brady swallowed hard, his throat visibly moved. "That's horrific. I sincerely hope they catch whoever's behind this." He glanced at his watch. "I really should get back. We're under a tight shipping deadline." "Of course," Marion said, stepping aside. "We won't keep you." "I wish you the best of luck," he said, already retreating. "I hope your daughters come home soon." They watched him briskly cross the port lot, his stride too fast, his posture too stiff. The moment he turned a corner, Marion exhaled. Did he seem off to you? She asked. Absolutely, Natalie confirmed. Could meet her eyes, rushed to leave. It was like he wanted out of that conversation before it even started. Back in the waiting room, Elena and Danica looked up from a hushed conversation. What happened? Elena asked. Was off, Marian said quietly. Said he was organizing disaster relief shipments, but something wasn't right. You know, Elena said, frowning, I remember thinking he was odd at that university event too. Didn't interact with the parents. He just hovered while his staff did all the talking. Maybe he's just socially awkward, Danica suggested gently. Not everyone's comfortable in tense situations. That's true, Natalie conceded, and Future Path didn't seem shady. No outrageous fees, legitimate volunteer programs. Marian looked out the window again. She could see Brady, still talking urgently to the same port worker. But for a CEO to personally manage shipping logistics at a port like this, that's unusual. Their conversation was interrupted as Agent Carter re-entered with a forensic technician. Ladies, he said, we're ready to collect your DNA samples, just a quick cheek swab. Each woman stepped forward in turn. The technician labeled and sealed the swabs with methodical precision. Brady Carter, Marian said once hers was done. Brady Coburn, Future Path CEO, is here at the port. We just spoke with him. Carter raised an eyebrow. Coburn? In Brownsville? He's here overseeing disaster relief shipments, Natalie added, but when we mentioned the container, he got noticeably uncomfortable. Carter nodded and jotted something into his notebook. We investigated Future Path thoroughly. Registrations, funding, travel documentation. All of it was above board, and Coburn's been cooperative throughout. Still, Marian pressed, it's a strange coincidence. Maybe worth another look. We'll follow up, Carter assured them. He stepped out and returned minutes later. I confirmed he's on the harbor logs. His name's attached to multiple humanitarian supply containers scheduled for Guatemala. So far, no known connection to the one where your daughter's belongings were found. The mothers exchanged uncertain glances. It wasn't enough to shake their suspicion, but it wasn't enough to accuse him either. What happens now? Elena asked, redirecting the tension. We'll keep processing the evidence, Carter said. In the meantime, I suggest you find accommodations nearby. This may take several days. We'll stay, Marian said firmly. We need to be here. Carter nodded. I'll make arrangements for a rental car and a place to stay. Officer Curtis entered just then. You're welcome to remain in town as long as needed. I'll be your point of contact. You can reach me anytime. Later, under the blazing Texas sun, the mothers followed Carter out of the harbor office. A patrol car escorted them to a modest hotel just blocks from the port. There, they were checked into adjacent rooms, close, so they wouldn't feel alone. Get yourselves settled, Carter told them. I'll arrange the car and meet you shortly. An hour later, the women, slightly fresher but visibly weary, met him in the hotel lobby. Rental agency's 10 minutes away, he said. I'll use my credentials to handle everything. It'll make the process quicker. The rental facility was a small, family-owned business tucked along a quiet commercial street. A faded wooden sign read, GF Coast Auto Rentals. Inside, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair looked up from behind a cluttered desk. Welcome to GF Coast Auto, he greeted warmly. I'm Mike Fletcher, owner. What can I do for you today? Agent Carter presented his badge. We need a mid-size vehicle, possibly for several days. Mike nodded. You've come to the right place. He handed over some paperwork as the mothers exchanged weary looks. The vehicle didn't just represent mobility. It represented momentum. Every mile they drove brought them closer to the truth. Mike nodded, fingers flying over his keyboard. I've got a 2023 Toyota Camry available, low mileage, smooth ride, should be plenty comfortable for you ladies. While he processed the paperwork, Agent Carter led the group outside to inspect the vehicle. The Camry was parked just outside the office, gleaming under the sun, the tires crisp, and the odometer showing under 15,000 miles. "This'll do just fine," Agent Carter said after a thorough once-over. He signed the necessary documents and the group headed back inside. "I'll just need a card for the deposit," Mike added, sliding the form across the counter. As he handed them the keys, he added, "Try to bring it back clean and with a full tank if you can. We're a small operation. Detailing costs hit us hard." "We'll take good care of it," Marion assured him, her voice soft but sincere. Mike sighed and leaned on the counter, his expression shifting to something a little darker. "I appreciate that. Had a group a few months ago, young guys. Left one of my SUVs trashed. Cost me nearly $2,000 to repair." "What happened?" Agent Carter asked, curiosity piqued by the offhand remark. "Brought it back, covered in sand and trash. Dents all over the exterior, food wrappers stuffed everywhere. Didn't refill the gas, either, but they didn't argue, just paid the damages and left. That part was almost weirder than the mess." The mothers exchanged glances. An instinctive, silent dialogue developed through shared trauma. "6 months ago?" Marion asked lightly, keeping her tone conversational. "That would have been May? June?" Mike nodded. "Yeah, Memorial Day weekend. Always short on cars that time of year." Natalie stepped forward, something in her voice shifting. "Would you mind showing us the photos of the damage? We're just interested in the kind of restoration work you had to do." Mike looked puzzled, but before he could question it, Agent Carter stepped in. "We're working a case that might involve similar vehicle misuse. Any details could help." Understanding settled on Mike's features. "Oh, sure, yeah, I documented everything for the insurance company." He pulled out his phone and began scrolling. "Here we go." He handed the device to Carter, who examined the photos with the sharp eyes of someone trained to spot patterns. Then he passed it to the mothers. The images revealed a vehicle in worse shape than expected. Scratches along the side, dents in both rear panels. But it was the interior that made Marion's stomach turn. Sand ground into the floor mats, empty fast food wrappers, and tucked beneath a back seat, plastic packaging that unmistakably belonged to male contraceptives. "Can you zoom in on that?" Elena asked quietly. Mike took the phone and enlarged the image. The confirmation was undeniable. The women leaned in, their breath shallow, hearts thudding. "Do you remember who rented the vehicle?" Carter asked, voice tight but controlled. Mike turned to his computer. "Give me a second," he typed, then nodded. "Here it is. Guy named Danny Rozo. Rented it for 5 days, May 23 to the 30th. Returned it late. I charged him for that on top of the damages." Carter was already jotting in his notebook. "Did he say anything when he returned the car? Excuse, story, anything?" Mike shook his head. That was the weird part. Most people at least tried to explain. He didn't say more than a couple words, just handed over the card, signed, and walked out. Never saw him again. "Do you still have his information?" Carter asked. "Of course, required for all rentals." Mike swiveled the monitors so Carter could see. Name, driver's license, address, everything. As Carter pulled out his phone and stepped outside to call in the lead, the mothers remained, staring at the screen. "You think this could be connected?" Mike asked. "We're not sure yet," Marion answered honestly. "But the timing fits. Our daughters disappeared that same week, though they were supposed to be in South Padre Island, not Brownsville." Mike's face shifted, sympathy etched into every line. "The 4 college girls from Utah, right? I remember that on the news. God, I'm so sorry. That's awful." "We found some of their belongings today," Natalie said, her voice hollow. "In a shipping container. At the port." Mike's eyes widened. "Jesus, And you think this Rosso guy? We don't know, Elena said. But the timing, the car, the silence? It's all worth investigating. Agent Carter returned, his face set. I've contacted Brownsville PD. They're sending a forensics team to inspect the vehicle. Even 6 months later, there might be something left. The SUV's been cleaned and repainted, Mike warned. Used several times since. Doesn't matter, Carter said. Biological traces can linger in fabrics, crevices, hidden surfaces. Modern forensics is remarkably resilient. Mike nodded and printed out the rental agreement. Here's everything we have on him. Hope it helps. Thank you, Carter said, folding the papers neatly into his coat. You've been incredibly helpful. As they prepared to leave, Mike called out, If I'd known, I'd have said something back then. You couldn't have known, Danica reassured him. But you've helped now, and that matters. They exited with mixed emotions. Their lead on Danny Rosso wasn't proof, but it was something, and after months of dead ends, something was everything. Back at the car, Marion hesitated. What now? It's getting late, Carter said, checking his watch. You all should rest. I'll stay back to coordinate with the forensics team once they arrive. Tomorrow, we start again, with clearer direction. And we'll search the coastline? Natalie asked. With this new lead, yes. More focus now. There's a beach not far from here. They agreed reluctantly, knowing rest was necessary, even if their minds were far from still. Marion couldn't sleep. Back in her hotel room, the ceiling seemed too quiet. Natalie sat near the window, scrolling absently through her phone. Voices drifted in from next door, Elena and Danica talking softly. I can't just sit here, Marion said suddenly, getting up. Natalie looked up. What are you thinking? They came to Texas for sea turtles. Olivia's contact at Future Path told them about a nesting beach. What if we take a look, just to see where they might have gone? We're supposed to wait for Carter, Natalie reminded her. Tomorrow might be too late. Natalie hesitated, then nodded. Let's talk to the others. Next door, Elena and Danica were hunched over a tourist map. We were just deciding where to get dinner, Elena said, looking up. Seafood place down the road. Actually, Marion began, we were thinking of checking out a local beach, the one they might have gone to for the turtle research. They weren't supposed to be in Brownsville. Danica frowned. South Padre Island was the destination. I know, Marion replied. But we're here, and there may be something along this stretch of coast. I just need to move, to do something. Elena and Danica exchanged a glance. Get it, Elena said gently. But we're exhausted, and Carter said, You two rest, Natalie interrupted. We'll be quick, just a walk. We'll be back for dinner. A compromise was struck. Danica and Elena stayed behind to rest and run errands, while Marion and Natalie headed to the beach. A quick search led them to Boca Chica, about 20 minutes away. As the car moved south past the city limits, development gave way to wild, untamed terrain. Scrub brush, dunes, and sky, the kind of place that felt isolated, hidden in plain sight. The parking lot near the beach was nearly empty. The air carried the brine of salt and something old. They walked past a weathered wooden sign. Sea turtle nesting season, April to September. Report any sightings immediately. Marion stopped. Do you think this was the beach? Natalie shook her head. Claire's plans showed South Padre. Definitely not here. Maybe the turtle habitats stretch along the coast, Marion reasoned, staring at the waterline. Maybe this whole coastline was part of it. They walked for several minutes, sand shifting under their feet, the gulf stretching out endlessly before them. Eventually, they reached a section of shoreline that looked different, clean, organized. A group of people, some in turquoise shirts, others in casual attire, were methodically picking up litter. Near them, a sign read, Coastal Keeper's weekly cleanup. A young woman with a trash pick approached, her smile easy and warm. "Hi there, I'm Ela. Here to join our beach cleanup?" Marian smiled faintly. "Just out for a walk, but this is wonderful, what you're doing." "Thanks, we do this every week," Eli replied. "It helps the turtles. The ocean, it matters." As she spoke, a young man with sandy hair approached, wearing the same turquoise shirt. "More volunteers?" he asked, eyes crinkling in the sun. And in that moment something shifted again, because what began as a walk was starting to feel like something more. "Just visitors?" Darren asked, a flicker of something unreadable in his voice. Eli smiled gently, correcting him. "They're not volunteers. This is Darren. He helps out regularly." Darren nodded, shifting the trash pick from hand to hand. There was something a bit too deliberate about the motion, like he was buying time or holding something in. Marian felt it immediately, a subtle shift in the air. "Actually," she began, her voice soft but steady, "we're not just visiting. Our daughters went missing 6 months ago. Today, the police uncovered a lead. That's why we're here." Eli's smile dropped. "Oh my God." "I'm so sorry." Darren stilled. The easy air he'd worn like a costume faded. His posture tensed, his eyes dropped to the sand, and he began stabbing at it with his trash pick, methodically, rhythmically, like he couldn't face what had just been said. "That's terrible," he mumbled without looking at them. "I hope they find them." Before anyone could respond, he turned and walked away quickly, leaving only a trail of silence behind him. Ela watched him go, puzzled. "Don't mind Darren," she said, offering a weak smile. "He doesn't do well with emotional stuff. But we're all hoping your daughters come home." Marian nodded, but her thoughts lingered on Darren's reaction. Something about it wasn't just awkward. It felt evasive. She shifted the conversation, gesturing around the beach. "Is this area always this littered?" Ela sighed, her expression weary. "It's gotten worse in the last year. This beach is remote, so people come here for privacy. We clean up after bonfires almost every week, despite the turtle nesting protections." She pointed to a large bin overflowing with trash, beer bottles, crumpled food wrappers, and other debris. Among the mess were familiar-looking foil wrappers, their branding unmistakable. Marian and Natalie exchanged a glance. They didn't need to say it. The same brand as in the rental car photos. "The city posts a guard during the day," Eli continued, "but at night it's unmonitored. That's when the real damage happens." "Is this common?" Natalie asked carefully. "Not every night," Ayla replied, "but at least a few times a month. Mostly college-age kids. Sometimes people even come across the border just for the parties." She gestured toward the south. "If you follow the beach far enough, you'll hit the Rio Grande Channel and the Baghdad Lighthouse." After a few more minutes of small talk, Ela excused herself. Marianne and Natalie walked further down the beach, the sound of crashing waves masking their hushed conversation. "Did you see those wrappers?" Natalie asked. "I saw them," Marianne replied. "And I'm starting to wonder, were our girls brought here for something they never agreed to? Some kind of party that went horribly wrong?" They walked in silence for a stretch. The question hung in the air like smoke, too dark to speak aloud again. "We're probably making connections that aren't there," Natalie said eventually. "We've had a long day. Maybe we're seeing patterns out of desperation." Marian nodded, but her instincts were buzzing. As they turned to head back, Marian spotted Darren again, walking away from the group, his phone pressed to his ear. The wind carried fragments of his voice across the sand. "No chase, no party, checked it. It's clean, keep it clean." He hung up, slipped on a pair of dark sunglasses and paused briefly. The light hit his profile just right, and Marian's breath caught. "Natalie," she whispered. Doesn't he look like that port worker who was talking to Brady this morning, the one with the sunglasses? Natalie squinted. I don't think so. You were face to face with that guy earlier and didn't say anything then. I know, but something about the stance, the sunglasses, it just hit me. Natalie offered a gentle reality check. Marian, lots of men wear sunglasses. They all start to look alike. Still, the unease stayed with Marian like a shadow. As they passed the cleanup area again, volunteers were packing up. Darren was nowhere in sight. The drive back to the hotel was silent, the pieces of the puzzle rattling in their heads with every turn of the tires. By the time they stepped into the hotel lobby, the sun was sinking low, casting amber streaks through the glass doors. Elena and Danica were already waiting with shopping bags at their feet. We were getting worried, Elena said, glancing at her watch. Almost sunset. Sorry, Marian replied. We lost track of time. They returned to Marian and Natalie's room and set out a simple dinner. Pre-made sandwiches, bottled water, and a few apples from the hotel's welcome basket. As they ate, Marian and Natalie shared everything they'd seen. The secluded beach, the volunteer group, Hela, the odd reaction from Darren, and most importantly, the same distinctive plastic wrappers. The beach isn't touristy, Natalie explained. More like forgotten coastline, but that's why people use it for parties. Ela said it's a regular issue. Beer, trash, even evidence of people crossing the border. Elena and Danica exchanged a loaded glance. That's interesting, Elena said slowly. Because while you two were out, we overheard something in the lobby. Danica leaned forward. Two young women, maybe mid-20s, were being approached by a couple of guys talking about some hidden gem beach and a party tonight. Natalie frowned. A party? Here? They weren't talking to us, Danica clarified, just loud enough to hear. One of them mentioned Brazos Island Park. I looked it up. It's basically an extension of Boca Chica, just further down. Marian's eyes widened. That's the direction Ela pointed, toward the Rio Grande. And that call we overheard from Darren, Natalie added, now connecting the pieces. No party tonight, remember? The room fell into an uneasy hush, everyone processing. Elena raised her hand. Let's not jump to conclusions. We don't know these things are connected. But the timing, Marian pressed. The rappers, the beach, Darren, Danny Russo's filthy car. It's all circling the same date, same place, and now Brady Coburn's conveniently nearby. Danica rubbed her temples. Even if you're right, what do we do? We're not law enforcement. We could get in trouble if we go poking around. I'm going back, Marian said softly but firmly. The room went silent. You can't be serious, Elena said. That could be dangerous. I won't interfere, Marian replied. I just need to see. With my own eyes. I have this gnawing feeling we're so close to something. Natalie sat on the bed, quiet, before finally standing. Then I'm going with you. But just to watch, nothing reckless. As the sun slipped beneath the horizon and the sky darkened into indigo, the mothers made their decision. They would go back. Not as tourists, not as victims. As mothers chasing the last flickers of light, desperate for answers in the gathering dark. Are you sure? Marian asked, her voice cracking slightly with relief. Absolutely not, Natalie replied with a dry, brave smile. But I'm not letting you go alone. Marian crossed the room and embraced her friend tightly. The hug was brief but grounding, an unspoken pact. Thank you, she whispered. We should tell Elena and Danica, Natalie said as they pulled apart. They'll worry if we're gone and don't know why. They knocked on the adjoining door and found the other two women still wide awake. No one had really slept since they'd arrived. Though hesitant at first, Elena and Danica agreed. If we're doing this, we stick together, Elena declared. 4 sets of eyes are better than 2. And we'll be safer as a group, Danica added practically, though worry flickered in her eyes. They quickly formed a plan. Drive to the beach, observe from a distance, and if anything seemed off or dangerous, they'd leave immediately. No confrontations, no risks, just eyes open and hearts steady. If there's nothing by sunset, we come back, Marion promised. This isn't about taking chances, it's about not missing one. Each woman carried with her not only the weight of her daughter's absence, but also the fragile glint of something they hadn't felt in months: agency. As they exited the hotel, dusk cloaked the sky in lavender and charcoal. The air felt heavier, the wind colder, as if nature itself sensed the shift. By the time they reached Boca Chica, the parking lot was nearly empty. A few motorcycles, a lone white van. Darkness pressed in from the edges, blurring the lines between water, land, and sky. "If there's a beach party happening," Elena murmured, scanning the quiet lot. "It hasn't started." "Or we misheard," Danica said, checking her watch. "Or we're already too late." Marion parked at the far end, near the dunes. "Let's take a look. If it's nothing, we leave." They made their way across the sand. The shoreline stretched before them, desolate and quiet. No fires, no music, no footprints but their own. "This feels like a waste of time," Elena said after 10 minutes. "We should." Then, footsteps. A figure emerged from the shadows near the dunes. A man in his late 20s, dark jeans, button-up shirt, his movements tight and rehearsed. "Hello there," he said, voice friendly, but his eyes scanned them with precision. "You ladies here for the event?" The women exchanged glances. "What event?" Natalie asked casually. He hesitated, eyes flicking from one face to the next. Then he forced a quick laugh. I thought..." "Never mind. Just a small bonfire. Birthday thing. Private gathering. Not really a party." Awkward silence followed. "I'm Danny," he added. "Sorry for not saying so earlier." Marion's stomach dropped. Danny. Her pulse ticked louder in her ears, but her face remained neutral. "Nice to meet you, Danny," she said lightly. "We're just passing through. Thought we'd catch the sunset." He nodded, visibly relaxing. "Beautiful time of day, though it gets dark quick out here, and there's no lighting." Danica forced a polite smile. "We were just leaving." "Probably for the best," he said, voice soft but firm. "The beach gets disorienting after dark." They thanked him and turned back. As they did, Marion watched him out of the corner of her eye. He was still watching them. Too still. Too controlled. "Did you see how relieved he looked when we said we weren't here for any event?" Elena whispered. "And how he never really explained what it was," Natalie added. "Private party? Bonfire? Which is it?" "Could he be that Danny?" Danica asked quietly. "Danny Rosso?" Marion's voice dropped. "It's a common name, but the timing, the beach, the tone, it's too much to ignore." Back at their car, Marion started the engine. As they began to pull away, 2 more vehicles arrived, a pickup truck and a dark sedan. 4 men stepped out, lugging coolers and what looked like camping gear. "This doesn't look like just a birthday," Elena said, her voice sharp with unease. Danica, peering through the rear window, suddenly gasped. "Marion! Stop! What is it?" "I just saw those 2 women from the hotel," she said. "They're not walking to the beach. They're being led, held by the arms, like they're being pushed toward that white van." Before anyone could react, headlights sliced across the lot. Another car pulled in, sleek, dark, deliberate. Marion squinted as it passed under the parking light. "That's Darren," she said. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "The volunteer from earlier." The passenger door opened, and in the flash of the dome light, Natalie gripped Marion's arm. "And that's Brady Coburn." The pieces slammed together like thunder. Danny on the beach. Darren at the cleanup. Brady the orchestrator. The van. The girls. The filthy rental car. The container. It was all converging here. Natalie was already dialing. "We need to call Agent Carter. Now." Marion nodded and drove calmly out of the lot, turning onto the road and pulling over just far enough away to stay hidden but keep the lot in view. While Natalie spoke urgently to Carter, Marion watched as the white van and Brady's car exited, heading north away from Brownsville. "He says what we did was dangerous," Natalie said, ending the call. "He's sending units now, but we need to go back to the hotel immediately." Marion watched the taillights shrink in the distance. "If we go now, we lose them." "This isn't our job," Elena pleaded. "The FBI can track them." "And if they vanish again?" Marion asked, looking each of them in the eyes. "I can't go back to waiting." Denicia exhaled shakily. "Then we go. But promise, we stay back. We watch. Nothing reckless." Marion nodded, her voice resolute. "I promise. Just eyes on, nothing more." She pulled back onto the road. The taillights ahead glowed like signals from another world, one where answers might finally be found. The highway wound north through coastal terrain. Civilization melted into scrub and silence. The air felt colder, heavier. "They're heading out of town," Elena noted. "Getting more remote." "Keep your phone ready," Marion said. "If we lose signal, we turn around." 20 minutes passed in tense quiet. Then Danica leaned forward. "They're stopping." Ahead, the van and sedan pulled into a small gas station, a lonely island of light in the dark. A flickering neon sign read, "Loaner Fuel and Food." Marion passed slowly, then looped around and parked on a roadside shoulder about 200 yards away. Just enough to see, not enough to be seen. "What are they doing?" Elena asked, voice hushed despite the distance. Through the store's windows they watched. Darren and Brady entered the convenience store. Danny followed, leaning on the counter, chatting with the cashier, all smiles and casual charm. "This doesn't feel like panic," Natalie said. "They don't know we're watching." After a few minutes they returned to the lot. But instead of getting into the vehicles, Danny popped the trunk of the van. From inside he pulled out license plates, clean, unmarked. He handed a pair to Brady. "No," Marion whispered, eyes wide. He's switching plates." Natalie squinted. "Those aren't Texas plates. That's Mexican registration." "They're crossing the border," Elena said, pulling out her phone. "I'm calling Carter again. This is it. This is proof." Before she could even dial, headlights swept in behind them, casting long shadows across the car interior. Marion glanced into the rearview mirror and instantly recognized the unmarked vehicle. They had seen it earlier that day at the port. Her heart leapt as Agent Carter and his partner stepped out, approaching with caution. Natalie rolled down her window as they reached the vehicle. Agent Carter's face was a mixture of frustration and concern. "We told you to return to the hotel," he said sternly. "This situation is dangerous." "You're civilians." "They're switching their plates," Marion interjected quickly. "Mexican ones. If we'd gone back, you wouldn't have seen this." His jaw clenched as he turned toward the gas station. "We'll take it from here. We'll follow them and see where they're going. Our backup's en route." Danica leaned forward. "What about the women? The ones being forced into the van?" "We have officers sweeping the beach now," Carter assured them. "But my priority is keeping you four safe." They all watched as Danny, Darren, and Brady finished their preparations and climbed back into their vehicles. "They're leaving," Marion said, her fingers twitching on the ignition. Carter stepped forward, placing a firm hand on the driver's side door. "You need to return to Brownsville. That's not a suggestion. It's for your safety and the integrity of this operation." "But," Marion began. "No buts," Carter interrupted, eyes steely. "We've got this. Go back and wait for my call." Reluctantly, they watched the van and sedan pull out of the gas station and disappear into the night. The FBI followed at a discreet distance. "Now what?" Elena asked. For a moment, Marion sat in silence, her heart thudding against her ribs. "Carter's right," Natalie said quietly. "This could get dangerous. We're not trained for this." Marion didn't respond immediately. She stared at the road ahead. "I can't turn around. Not now. Not when we're this close." "I agree," Danica said softly. 4 months of waiting, hoping. "I need to see this through." "We could follow at a distance," Elena offered. "Farther behind Carter's car, just so we know where they're going." The decision made, Marion turned the key. The car hummed to life, and they pulled slowly onto the road, following the others, but staying back. Much farther back. The terrain grew more desolate, street lights faded into memory. Industrial buildings gave way to brushland and gravel lots. They stayed behind the FBI vehicle, which remained a ghostly presence several hundred yards ahead. "They're turning," Elena whispered, pointing as the vehicles ahead took a right onto a dirt road. Agent Carter didn't follow directly. Instead, he continued on, turning onto a side road that paralleled the path. Marion mimicked his move, killing her headlights and driving only by moonlight. "Smart," Natalie whispered. "They're positioning to observe." They parked behind a low-rise that offered a direct view of an abandoned warehouse, bathed in the eerie glow of a single sodium light. The van and sedan were now parked at a loading dock. Through their windshield, they saw Carter and his partner exit the vehicle and take up positions behind natural cover, guns drawn. Then the warehouse doors opened. Yellow light poured onto the cracked concrete. Figures emerged. 2 were pushing stretchers. No, gurneys, with people. Danica clutched Elena's arm. "Those are people." Bound. Blindfolded. Young women. Their limbs slack and helpless. The movement was too smooth, too routine. Marion's phone buzzed. "Agent Carter." "We see them," she said immediately. "They're loading people." "Backup is 3 minutes out," Carter replied, his voice clipped. "Stay where you are, do not move. Do not be seen." "Wait," Marion said quickly. "Earlier today, Darren said something about no. Could that be where they're going?" There was a pause. "No is a town across the Mexican border," Carter confirmed. "If they reach it, rescue becomes nearly impossible." He said something muffled, then the line cut off. Suddenly, patrol cars appeared without sirens, just flashing lights. Officer Curtis's cruiser led the charge, followed by 3 others and an unmarked SUV. The raid began with explosive precision. Carter and his partner flanked the building while officers surrounded the perimeter. Commands rang through the air. "FBI, hands up." Brady and Darren complied instantly. Danny ran. A flash, a shout, a shot. Danny dropped. Chaos, then stillness. Brady and Darren were cuffed. Officers stormed the warehouse. Girls were pulled from the van, broken, drugged, alive. Marion started the car. Carter said, "Stay," Elena reminded her. "That was before the shooting," Marion replied. "Our daughters might be in there." She drove slowly, cautiously, until a perimeter officer stopped them. After identifying themselves, they were waved through. Inside the warehouse, hell awaited. Cages, mattresses, makeshift walls, and over a dozen young women, some crying, some catatonic, all broken. "Olivia?" Marion called. Came a whisper. They ran. There they were, Olivia, Jasmine, Claire, Sophia, huddled, pale, thin, but breathing. Paramedics swarmed. IVs were started, vitals checked. "They're heavily sedated," a medic explained. "We need to move them." Elena held Jasmine's face. "What did they do to you?" Sophia tried to speak, but couldn't. Slurred syllables, raw fear. Agent Carter approached. "Go with your daughters. We'll handle the rest." Outside, Brady sat cuffed in a cruiser, his head hung low, the face of a man who once promised bright futures now soaked in disgrace. The hospital was sterile, clean, but no comfort. Marion stared at the ER doors, waiting again, but this time with hope. "At least we found them," she whispered. "Alive, but at what cost?" Carter and Curtis arrived, solemn. "We need your statements," Curtis said. "Now, while it's fresh." One by one, the mothers spoke. About the container, the car, the beach, Darren, Brady. When it was Marion's turn, she added, "Ela from the cleanup crew." "She didn't know, I'm sure of it." Curtis nodded. "We'll vet all of them. Darren likely used real groups as cover." Then came the truth. Brady Coburn and his men had run a human trafficking operation. Future Path volunteers had been a mask, a front to scout vulnerable girls on campuses. The Oregon trip was bait. The Sea Turtle detour was a trap. They were moved after local patrols picked up, Carter explained. The port container was temporary. Darren and others worked the docks. They had access, schedules, control. A nurse appeared. "Your daughters are awake. Room 315 and 316. Together, always together. In wheelchairs, the girls were brought into one room for questioning. The stories spilled slowly. Party invite at a local cafe. A hidden beach. One drink. Then darkness. Then captivity. Brady, Dare and Smiles turned into monsters. They endured weeks of mental and physical abuse until even the container felt like mercy. "Darren brought us food," Claire whispered. "Sometimes we rationed everything. We didn't know if we'd be left to die." Sophia added, "We thought we were on a ship. Sometimes we felt motion." All four suffered malnutrition, infections, respiratory issues. "But you never gave up," Olivia said to their mothers. "Even in the dark, I felt you searching." The sun was rising now, a pink and gold promise through the hospital windows. They had found their daughters. In a box, at the edge of the sea, but they had never truly lost them. Not in the ways that mattered most.